Hi guys, this is George back here with another video, and welcome to another review video where today I'm going to be discussing my recent Hex behind the scenes tour at Alton Towers. So if you don't know, this is an experience that Alton Towers offer as part of their VIP packages. There are lots of different experiences you can take part in, and with this one I went behind the scenes of the iconic Hex The Legend of the Towers attraction at Alton Towers, their Vekoma Madhouse. And I'm going to be talking all about the experience today, talking about the prices of it, what was included, what happened during the tour, and also my recommendations and whether I think it was worth it or not. So we'll start off by talking about the price of the experience. So a standard ticket for the Hex behind the scenes tour is £75 per person. However, if you're a pass holder, then you can get that for £60. So that's what I paid for this experience. And what was included in the money that I paid for the experience was actually quite a large amount of stuff. So of course we got the experience itself, the behind the scenes tour, which is the reason why you are paying for this experience, obviously. But you do get some other things included as well, such as express parking. So you get to park right next to the front of right by the front entrance of the park, rather than parking in the main car park and having to either walk to the entrance or get the monorail over. So that is much more convenient. Normally that's about £25 for express parking, so you're getting quite a lot of value for your money with that. As well as that, you also get a Hex fast track one shot as well, which you can use at any point throughout the day of your tour. Of course, with Hex, it is a very high throughput ride, and also the main queue is it's mainly outside until it leads to the indoor section, but the indoor section is after the merge point. Normally, you won't need a fast track for Hex because the queue is normally inside anyway, and once it's inside, you're not going to be skipping any queue if you do go through the fast track, because you'll be waiting in the same queue as anyone in the main queue, as long as it isn't spilling outside into the outdoor section of the queue. So it's nice that they do offer that. However, it's probably not something that you're really going to need for this experience, or that's going to really save any time. However, yeah, you do still get a lot included in this package. The tour starts 45 minutes after park close, so the park closed at 4 o'clock on the day of my experience, so I got to the outside of the attraction for 4:45, and that was when the tour began. And in terms of the tour, there was a lot going on. It was about a 2-hour experience overall, so there was a lot of detail and a lot of information as part of this tour. So when we first started, they handed us one of these sheets, and this has got lots of photos on it of the construction of the ride, the restoration of the towers, and it's also got the site layout and plans on the other side as well. So originally, Hex The Legend of the Towers had a budget of £4 million, however around half of that was to be used on the ride system, and the other half was for restoration works of the towers. Of course, the towers did used to originally be known as Alton Lodge during the 1700s. However, during the 1830s and 40s, Augustus Pugin, a British architect, did a lot of work on the towers, extending it to make it the towers that we know today. So of course it's gone through a lot of changes over the years. It started off much smaller, and throughout the 1800s it turned into what we know it today, a very iconic part of Alton Towers. So we started off on the outside where they talked to us a bit about the history of the towers themselves, and then we made our way into the first section of the queue line, which is in the armoury. And there was lots of different artefacts in this section of the queue line. Normally you don't get to see a lot of these theming pieces very well because it's very dark in there. However, the beauty with this behind the scenes tour is that you get to see everything with all of the lights on, which is really cool. So you get to see it in much more detail than you can see when it's dark. There were lots of different theming props in there that you walk past during the queue line to just add to the atmosphere and immersion of the attraction itself, a very story-driven attraction. Also, when you come through the main entrance, the big entrance doors of the towers, then you pass the big bell, which was the original bell that was in the bell tower above the chapel when there was, of course, occupancy inside the towers, when the Earls of Shrewsbury were living inside the towers, and that was, of course, the main entrance to the towers as well. That would be your grand reveal into the house, and then you'd walk through the armoury into the other parts of the towers. So the next part of the queue line that we went into was the picture gallery. And of course, normally in this area, that is where you look at the big portrait of the 15th Earl, which I'll talk about in a minute. However, yeah, with this section, at this point, you're not normally allowed to film or take any photos in the attraction. With this behind the scenes tour, you can take as many photos of you as you want. They do say to not take any videos. There were a couple of points where we were allowed to take some videos, but on the whole they did say don't take any videos because it kind of spoils the surprise for anyone else doing the experience. Of course, you pay a lot of money to do these VIP experiences, and if anyone can just go and search up everything on the internet and then you're basically getting it for free, really. Although of course nothing beats actually doing these experiences in person, but they do say to just not take too many videos, just to keep the secrets a little bit of the attraction, so it's a bit more of a surprise to other people doing the experience. But yeah, inside here we found that, so we looked at the big portrait which lights up and it talks to you about the first part of the story and what you're going to experience in this attraction. The photo on the wall is not actually of the 15th Earl, it's actually of the 16th Earl. There are no known photos of the 15th Earl, so they had to settle with using a photo of the 16th Earl instead. However, if you go on the attraction, you'd never know that. I didn't know that until I did this tour. So yeah, there's a bit of an interesting fact for you about this attraction. So of course, yeah, normally in the picture gallery it's a bit of a start to the attraction, a bit of a set, like the start to the story. It's going to tell you basically what you're going to experience in the ride. And then you make your way into the cinema where you watch the first pre-show. And this is the most story-driven of the pre-shows. There's 2 pre-shows on the attraction, and this is the one where you're going to learn all about the story of the attraction, the history of the 15th Earl, and the storyline of this attraction. Of course, if you don't know the storyline, once you go on the ride, the pre-show does a great job at telling you the story. So once you go through there, then you'll understand it very well, and then of course you get your chance to ask different questions as well throughout. So once we got into the cinema, all the lights were on, but they then turned the lights off and played the pre-show for us in normal like show conditions, which was cool to see. And then they turned all the lights back on again and we got to ask all the questions and see all the different props around. We got to see the operators panel as well for the batching area. That's of course where they do some of the batching, and like we saw the operators panel for that, which was really cool to see. And there was also some other sections in there as well, some other little props as well to see, as well as in the picture gallery as well. There were some nice props in there to see as well, with a few hidden Easter eggs as well that you may notice if you're doing the tour. So yeah, that was really cool to see. So we got to talk a bit about the history of the ride, and here's another fun fact for you. Originally, the storyline of this attraction was very different to what we know it today. So originally, it was much more of an actor-led experience, where the actors would take you through the different scenes with a bit more of a humorous storyline and feel for the attraction. They called it a very cringy kind of style, which they had on this attraction. However, it didn't go down very well with guests, so they completely changed it up into the Hex we know today. However, here's another fun fact for you. The original attraction was going to be called the Towers Alton Towers, and for anyone who's familiar with some of the newer additions to Alton Towers, you may know a ride called the Towers Alton Manor. So yes, they did reuse that name and change it up a little bit. They do like to reuse ideas at Alton Towers, and this was an example of one of them. And if you go on the Dark Ride database, you can find an original logo for the Towers Alton Towers attraction, which is really cool to see. That again is something I did not know before I did this tour, so that was really cool to see. After the cinema room, you then make your way into the Octagon, where basically it talks to you in there about how the vault has been sealed for 200 years. It's been found during some restoration works, and you're about to go into the vault to experience the story of this ride. And of course, once you're in the vault, that's where the actual ride itself is. So you start off by watching that pre-show. Again, they played that for us in normal show conditions, which was cool to see, and then we got all our chance to ask different questions. They talked to us a lot about the restoration in there. There was loads of restoration that happened inside the Octagon during the construction of this ride. Lots of the pillars were replaced. Also a new set of stairs was installed because the old ones were crumbling away. There was loads of restoration works done during this period, and a lot of the photos on that sheet I showed you earlier will show like the before the restoration and also afterwards as well. So you can see how much work actually goes on to restoring the towers, not just during the construction of Hex, but also just at any point throughout the year when they need to do any work on it. Of course, after the Octagon, you then make your way out of the the room, and you make your way to the left. This is the point where you exit the towers. However, of course, with the theming and immersion of this attraction, you'd never know that you had exited the towers. Of course, with the fact that the towers are a grade 2 listed building, they couldn't build an attraction inside the towers. They had to build it at least 8 meters away from the towers. So you start off in the towers, you then make your way through a corridor outside of the towers. However, you wouldn't know because it looks exactly the same as inside the towers, but I did film a little bit of a clip where I was knocking on the wall of the main towers, and then I knocked on the wall of the corridor, and it feels very different, and obviously the sound's very different as well. It's much more plasticky in the corridor, whereas the towers are of course genuine rockwork. So of course you then make your way over into the holding area where you wait to board the attraction itself, and you get onto either the left side or the right side of the room, split yourself up into 2 groups before you head onto the ride system. Another fun fact for you, this area was originally going to feature fake elevators. So you were going to get into the fake elevator and it was going to simulate the fact that you were going down into the Earl's Vault. However, there were a variety of reasons why that didn't go ahead, and they instead had it as how we know it today, where you just wait in that room for the doors to open and then you make your way onto the madhouse. This was the point where the group got split up into 2 smaller groups. So the first group went into the operator's cabin first, and the second group went into the drum first. I was part of the first group, so we went into the operator's panel booth first. We weren't allowed to take any photos inside the cabin. However, we did get to see all of the controls and how it all worked. Of course, with this ride system, it's a very complex ride system, so it was really cool to see all the tech in the op booth for that. There was also a screen, like a big screen with the ride itself on it, the gondola, and also the room itself, which shows exactly the position that the gondola and the room is at any point during the cycle. Of course, with this ride, the gondola swings side to side, and then the room can spin as well. And then, so yeah, after the operator's booth, we then went into the drum. So with this ride system, of course, basically it's a room inside of a room, and the room inside is a fake room basically, and it spins around to simulate that you're going upside down. The gondola itself can swing 15 degrees each way. So of course that's the sensation that you feel when you're leaning forwards or backwards, being pushed back into the seat. That can rotate up to 15 degrees. However, the room can do a full 360 degree rotation. It can only do that 3.5 times though before it would have to spin back the other way. And that's just to make sure that none of the cables for the lighting and effects got tangled up. So yeah, it can do a maximum of 3.5 rotations each one way before it would have to start going the other way as well. And also tech services can also manually run it as well, so they can tilt it as far or as little as they need to if they were going to do any checks on the ride system itself. Here's another interesting fun fact for you. You get loads of fun facts on this tour. Of course, when the refurbishment was happening between 2023 and 2024, there was a lot of rumours that the madhouse itself was actually getting replaced. Of course, that wasn't actually the case, but if they did want to replace the ride system, they could just take the roof of the building off and get one crane, just one crane, and they could just pick the entire thing up in one piece if they wanted to remove it and then replace it with a new ride system, which is absolutely crazy, considering when you go into the vault, it feels absolutely massive. And that's another thing I noticed whilst inside the drum as well. You really don't get the scale inside there as you do when you're inside the vault itself. It seems much smaller when you're inside the drum than it does when you're inside the vault, which is absolutely crazy considering it seems massive when you're in the vault, and then you go into the drum and it's like, how does that room fit in here? It seems like it's so much bigger once you're actually in there, but it was really, really cool to see that. And of course, going into the drum is something that you can only do on this VIP experience. It's very exclusive. Even the staff members and operators don't normally go in there. The only people that would ever go in there are tech services when they were going to do any work on the attraction. The ops and staff members, the hosts, they don't normally get to go in there. So if you want to see this, if you want to go inside the drum and kind of be one of the few people that gets to go inside there and see it, you've got to do this experience in order to be able to go in there, which definitely adds to the exclusivity of the event and definitely makes you feel like that VIP experience that you've paid a lot of money for, which was certainly very, very interesting. And on this sheet as well, there were actually lots of photos of the construction as well. Like you can see the ride itself once it was being constructed and the ride system going in, some concept art for it down here, the theming in progress, concept art for it and sketches. So there is so much to see on this little handout that they gave us, and it was good because at points throughout the experience they go, if you look at your sheet you could see what it looked like then, or you could see the ride system going in, or when this bit was refurbished. So it was really cool to be able to see that. So then, after we had seen the drum, we then went into the vault itself and we sat down on the ride, and they played the lighting sequence for us. So they played all the music and the lighting as if you were actually on the ride. They just didn't have it where the ride was in movement. So we got to see all the lighting effects without actually spinning around like you normally would on the ride, which was certainly a very weird experience. I'm very used to going around and having the tilting and the full ride experience, so seeing all of these effects without the actual movement of the ride itself was very weird, but it was a very cool experience. And again, that's something you have to do this tour if you want to be able to experience that. It gives you a new appreciation for a lot of the lighting effects inside there. That was then the point where we got to ask any questions, have a wander around the vault. After that, they were basically like, yeah, just have a wander around, see what you like, take as many photos as you want. So we got to just have a wander around the vault for about 15-20 minutes, which was really cool. And then that was the point where it concluded our experience. And they gave us a couple of keepsakes for that as well. So we got a certificate, as you can see here. This isn't just a cheap certificate as well, just like printed on a piece of paper. This is a proper, like, laminated, nice piece of card that is on here, which is really nice. So that's definitely going to protect it and make sure it doesn't get damaged. Not that I'm going to be damaging it anyway. I'm going to be keeping this very safe because, yeah, again, if you want one of these, you have to do the experience. And you also get a limited edition pin badge as well, which is really cool. So here's a look at the pin badge. I absolutely love the pin badges for the VIP experiences at Alton Towers, and this one is really cool. Again, if you want this pin badge, you have to do the experience. So overall, with the £60 that I paid for this experience, bear in mind that included the tour itself, express parking, the pin badge, the certificate, and I definitely think it was worth the money. The VIP hosts were great, very informative. They had loads of information on them to be able to tell us all. They answered any questions really well. They were very professional throughout the whole thing, very friendly, very talkative, willing to take any photos of you if you wanted to take any photos. They were so friendly, and they genuinely really seemed like they cared about the experience and they cared about the ride and its significance in the park's lineup, and you could tell that they were just happy to be there and enjoying their job, which is really nice. It's always nice when you get a host like that you can tell is enjoying their job, and it just makes you enjoy it a lot more as well when they're giving you that level of customer service that you pay a lot of money for, and then when you get that good service from them, it just makes the experience so much better. So they were really friendly, they were absolutely great. I couldn't fault them at all. The experience overall was really good. It was great to see some different things that you wouldn't normally get to see throughout the ride experience itself, such as like all the experience with all the lights on, getting those little pictures as well with the handout with all the pictures on. So that was really cool. It was definitely worth the money that I paid for it. If you are booked onto this experience at any point, have a great time. I'm sure you're going to really enjoy it. If you haven't booked it and you're thinking of booking it, you want to do it, I definitely recommend it. It was a fantastic experience. Even if you're not too big of a fan of the ride itself and you're just interested in the towers, you'll learn a lot about the towers on this tour as well. So even if you're not interested in the ride, you'll learn a lot of history about the towers as well. So it appeals to a lot of people. It's a fantastic experience, very informative, loads of interesting facts along the way. I really did enjoy the experience and definitely thought it was worth the money. But that's now the end of this video here. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at George Kelly and follow me on Twitter at George Kelly. Thank you very much for watching. Stay safe everyone, and I will see you all later. Bye.